The air was still, too still for a California morning. Even the birds outside seemed to sense the tension inside the small kitchen, where 24-year-old Alina Monroe zipped up her weathered hiking bag with trembling hands. It was the same bag she used during her Appalachian solo trek 2 summers ago, but this trip, this one felt different. Her mother, Clara Monroe, leaned against the counter, arms folded, trying not to look at her daughter. The silence between them wasn't new. It had taken root years ago, after Alina's father left, and never truly lifted. Now, Clara's worry clashed with the same walls they'd both built long ago. "You don't have to do this alone, Clara," finally said, voice low but firm. "You could go with a group. You could stay closer." "I already told you," Alina replied, pulling the bag over her shoulder. "I'm not running away. I'm going to document everything. This is what I've been planning for months." Her mother's gaze dropped to the floor, jaw clenched. "Planning doesn't protect you from people." Alina hesitated, eyes softening. She walked over and placed her camera bag gently on the table. "I'm careful. I'll check in every few days. You'll see the uploads before the world does." The attempt at reassurance fell flat. Clara didn't look up. She merely nodded, blinking rapidly. Alina stood for a long moment, studying her mother's aging features, the lines etched deeper since they last truly spoke. She opened her mouth to say something more, something real, but closed it again. The words were never easy between them. So instead, she walked toward the door, as her hand touched the knob. Her mother spoke again softly this time, broken almost. "Just don't disappear on Alina." Alina froze. "I won't," she said without turning back. "I'll find myself out there, I promise." The next scene begins with the rhythmic clicking of her camera, shutter fast, precise, full of focus. Alina stood at the edge of a sunlit canyon in Arizona, wind teasing her hair, her lens pointed at a hawk slicing the sky. Her voiceover filled the audio for her upcoming vlog. "Hey guys, day 1 of the trip. Just me, nature, and hopefully some breathtaking footage. I've mapped my trail from Arizona to the Rockies, then south toward the Rio Grande. I'm chasing moments, real ones." She smiled into the lens, a smile, too bright, too full. Behind the confidence, her eyes flickered with something unspoken. Not fear, not yet, but perhaps uncertainty. Each day she recorded snippets of her journey: campfires, cracked hiking boots, mountain sunsets, close calls with wild animals. The thrill of survival in nature's raw arms. Her channel grew steadily. People admired her spirit. Commented things like, "Wish I had your courage. You're living the dream, girl." But by day 19, the tone began to shift. Her vlogs grew shorter, editing rougher, her voice thinner. In one clip, she sat alone near a dense thicket, whispering to the camera. "Met someone near the ridge today. Seemed nice. Offered to share firewood. Might just be tired. But something felt ... off." She deleted the next minute of footage before uploading. Back home, Clara watched every video religiously. She paused frames to look into her daughter's eyes, tried to read between the lines. She noticed the shift, the shadows forming, the fatigue behind the smile. Then, suddenly no more uploads. Just ... silence. Clara waited. 1 week, then 2, then 6 years. The boy saw it first. It was a warm August afternoon on the banks of the Rio Grande. Near a shallow curve known more for skipping stones than catching fish, Marco Alvarez, 11, dropped his pole and waded in, drawn by something tangled in the reeds. "Papa, there's something here." His father looked up from the cooler. When he saw Marco dragging the mud-covered object ashore, he hurried over. It was a camera, small, rugged, coated in sludge, but somehow still intact. The screen was cracked, lens half buried in river silt, but the SD card remained sealed in its plastic sheath. They turned it in to the local sheriff's office, unsure what to make of it. That same night, the footage was passed to Texas Rangers, where Detective Celia Maris reviewed its contents inside a dim, sterile room. She hit play. The first few files were sun-soaked and ordinary. A young woman windblown, laughing, hiking. Across vast American landscapes, the camera followed her through lush valleys, barren deserts, misty hills. Her name appeared in one intro clip. Alina Monroe, Wild Alone EP4. Celia leaned forward. Her pen stopped moving. There were dozens of videos, some edited, others raw. Toward the end, they grew shaky. Out of focus, frantic. In the second clip, Alina sat by a dying fire, face illuminated by a flickering flame. Her eyes darted beyond the camera. "I don't know if I should be filming this anymore," she whispered. "He was waiting outside my tent last night, just ... standing there, a nervous laugh. It's probably nothing. But if anything happens to me ... She stopped, looked directly into the lens, then reached forward and shut it off. Detective Maris stared at the timeline. One last file remained. Title: Just a Time Stomp, 6:12 a.m., June 8th. She pressed play. The screen lit up in a distorted blur. The camera jostled violently. Wind hissed against the mic. Branches snapped underfoot. Alina's face appeared briefly smeared with dirt, lip bleeding. She was running. "If someone finds this, please," her voice cracked. He said, "I can't leave. I thought I could trust him." A crash echoed behind her, something heavy. Her breathing grew shallow. The camera panned wildly, trees, sky, ground. Then she crouched low behind a fallen tree trunk, barely holding the lens steady. "I think he's close," she whispered. "I hear his boots." There was a long silence, then ... a voice, faint male, calling her name, "Come back, we're not done yet. We're not done yet." The lens fogged. Alina gripped the camera tighter. She mouthed something, but no sound came. A single tear slid down her cheek. Suddenly, the screen flashed white. A hand, just a glimpse, reached across the frame. Then static. The video ended. Detective Maris sat motionless for a full minute. She rewound the last 10 seconds, froze on. The hand, male, calloused, dirty nails. And on one finger, a distinctive ring, silver, twisted into the shape of a coiled serpent. She made a note, back in the forensics lab. The camera's internal data showed the GPS coordinates embedded in the last upload. It placed Alina less than 2 miles from the Mexican border, deep within an uncharted patch of wilderness that rarely saw human footfall. The footage leaked within days. Online forums exploded. Alina Monroe's channel, long dormant, surged in followers. People who had once followed her travel vlogs returned with horror. Some said the voice sounded familiar. One even posted a name: Cole Dermott, a volunteer ranger seen in early episodes. Detective Maris wasn't ready to speculate. Not yet, but one thing was clear. Whoever held the camera last never meant for it to be found. The deeper they looked, the less they recognized her. Detective Celia Maris sat at her desk, walls now papered with screenshots, maps, and timelines. In front of her, Alina Monroe smiled in 1,000 frozen outstretched on a canyon ledge, toes dipping into alpine streams, firelight flickering across her face. She looked unstoppable, unafraid. The kind of woman people envied. But Maris wasn't looking at the lighting or the angles. She looked at the eyes. And something was always off, always guarded. The forensics team recovered more than video. Hidden in a zippered pouch inside Alina's camera bag was a travel-worn leather journal. Warped from water damage, but legible in parts. The pages weren't poetic or performative like her vlogs. They were fragmented, raw, haunted. May 14th, he's back. Again, said he was just checking in. But he didn't knock. May 19th, got more views this week. Doesn't matter. The more I post, the more he shows up. May 24th, he said I had no choice. That phrase, he said, I had no choice, 5 times across 3 entries. Always in different ink, always circled. Celia circled it again in her own notes. He. Who was he? Online, the case exploded. Reddit forums rebranded themselves #FindAlina. Her old fans became digital detectives. They cross-referenced frames, built GPS logs based on landmarks, dissected every spoken word. One user posted an overlay showing changes in Alina's tone, face tension, and background noise across all 26 uploaded vlogs. "Watch her eyes in EP17, one wrote. She hears something off camera, doesn't say anything, just goes quiet." Another pointed out a man in the background of EP12, beard, tan ranger hat, carrying firewood. He walks past slowly, looking directly into the lens for a split second. The timestamp showed 8:42 p.m. Within hours. The internet had a name, Cole Dermott, a part-time wilderness volunteer who worked summers in several national parks. His last known address was in New Mexico, but he'd gone off-grid in 2019, 6 months after Alina vanished. Detective Maris requested old staff rosters from the park's service. And there he was, Cole Dermott, quiet, mid-30s, few known connections. Several guest complaints about inappropriate lingering. None formally reported. Always transferred out before anything escalated. The facade of Alina's freedom began to crumble. She wasn't living wild and alone. She was being watched. Maybe followed. What haunted Maris most was how good Alina had become at pretending. Her vlogs never mentioned fear. Her captions were inspirational. Her voiceovers calm. She spoke about liberation, clarity, and trusting the unknown. Yet her private words told another story of paranoia, silence, and guilt. In one unpublished video fragment, buried in the camera's cache, Alina sits on a rock, wind roaring behind her. She's not addressing her viewers. "Mum, if you ever see this, I wasn't being brave, I was being cornered." She looks down. "I let someone in. I thought he wanted to help me. But now he says if I tell anyone, he'll ruin everything." She never says his name. The clip ends abruptly with a sound, something metallic, like a latch snapping shut. Celia leaned back, absorbing the duality of Alina's existence. The curated girl in the footage, the frightened woman in the journal. One public, one private, one already mourned, one still whispering from the dirt. The gaps between the two women were closing, and now, with a name Cole Dermithos, gaps were about to close violently. Cole Dermott didn't look like a monster, but when authorities finally tracked him to a small town outside Alamogordo, New Mexico, he was working as a mechanic, living in a camper behind the shop. He greeted the officers without resistance, wiped the grease from his hands, and followed them quietly into the cruiser. No outburst, no panic, just a quiet man with eyes to still. Detective Celia Maris observed him through the two-way mirror. He sat alone in the interview room, sipping from a plastic cup of water. His nails were clean. He wore the same coiled silver serpent ring from the Vienna. Attempt to hide it, she entered. "Mr. Dermott, you know why we brought you in?" He looked up, unblinking. "Alina Monroe." His voice was calm. Flat. Maris sat down across from him, flipping open a thin folder. "You were volunteering at Mesa Verde National Park the week she disappeared. You logged in for trail maintenance but didn't sign out. You didn't return for your next scheduled shift." Cole gave a small shrug. "Storm came in. I left early. Thought that was obvious?" "She was seen on your trail," Maris said. "Camped less than half a mile from where you'd pitched your tent." "I barely spoke to her," he replied. "Just saw her pass my tent. Quiet girl, waved once. That was it." His gaze never wavered. Maris leaned in. "You're in one of her videos." Briefly, carrying firewood. "Did you know she filmed you?" "No," he said. Then, with a tilt of the head, "Is that illegal?" She paused. "No," she admitted. "But the night after that video, she stopped uploading. A few weeks later, you changed jobs, moved states, deleted your social media." Cole folded his hands. The serpent ring glinted beneath the overhead light. "I was never on social media," he said. "Not really my thing." Later, Maris replayed the footage in the lab frame by frame. The background shot of him near Alina's tent, his eyes locked on the lens. The strange stillness in his face, not startled, not casual, calculated, she compared it with video logs from other hikers. Cole appeared in several, always in the background, never speaking, always watching. Park ranger interviews painted a pattern. Cole volunteered in 6 different parks over 4 years. 3 missing persons cases overlapped with his service. 2 were ruled as accidents. 1 remained unsolved. He had no criminal record, but patterns don't lie. Maris revisited the diary fragments. One entry read, "He doesn't say much, just stares, like I'm already his." Another, a week later, he said, "No one checks this trail, that I was lucky to be found. But I wasn't lost." Her pen stopped. She returned to the footage, the final clip. The voice, Alina's whisper, "I let someone in. I thought he wanted to help. Was it Cole, or was someone else in the trees?" The interrogation stalled. Cole never asked for a lawyer. He answered every question politely, denied every accusation with precision. But when Maris slid the journal across the table, opened to a page with his description, he tensed. Barely he looked at the page. Looked at her. "I didn't hurt that girl," he said softly. She, misunderstood me. That's all." Maris narrowed her eyes. What exactly did she misunderstand? "She thought she could walk away," he murmured, almost to himself. Then, he leaned back. "I barely spoke to her," he repeated. But this time, the words were thinner, less certain, like they belonged to someone else. Cole was released, pending further investigation. Not enough to hold him, but Maris knew what she saw. Not guilt, exactly, but possession. A man who believed something had been taken from him. A man who thought being near someone gave him the right to own them. Back in her office, a forensics tech entered with new findings from the SD card. He held up a printout. "There's more," he said. "Deleted files, fragmented clips, eyes narrowed. Can we restore them? We're trying, but..." One thumbnail already recovered. He flipped the page. A blurry image. Alina, crouched low, crying, his hand on her shoulder. The screen flickered. Digital forensics had been scrubbing Alina Monroe's SD card for 4 days, dissecting fragments, reconstructing time, stamps, tracing audio layers. Most of the deleted files were corrupted beyond repair, but one stitched itself back together like a buried memory, refusing to stay hidden. Detective Maris watched in silence as the clip played. The frame was dark. Moonlight filtered through trees. The camera lay sideways on uneven ground. Branches swayed in the wind, but no one held the lens. The audio cracked with static, then settled. "I told you this wasn't part of the deal." Alina's voice, shaking. Angry, not performative, panicked. "I said I'd stay one more night. That's all." No response. She appeared in frame, just a portion of her silhouette, lit by her headlamp. Her breath was fast, her jacket unzipped. She clutched her camera with one hand and a knife in the other, small, dull, more symbolic than useful. Then came the voice. "No one leaves until I say so." A male voice, soft, icy, not a scream, not a threat, a declaration. The camera trembled in her hands. She tried to aim it toward him, but the lens caught only Shape's boots stepping forward. A flannel sleeve, the flash of a silver ring, the serpent. "You promised me space," she hissed. "You said you just wanted to talk, and you promised." "Not to film me," the man replied. "You broke your promise. So now, we fix that." Alina backed away, breath hitching. "Don't come any closer." The feed cut to static. When the lights came back in the lab, no one said a word. Maris stared at the paused screen, fingers curled into fists. There was enough. Not to prosecute, but enough to know. Cole, Dermot had lied. Again. She replayed the audio 5 more times. Ran it through voice recognition software. While not conclusive, it showed a 93% match to Cole's voice from the interview. But the law needed more than matches. It needed confession, proof. Or blood. In the next clip, barely 4 seconds long, Alina huddled under a tarp. Her whisper barely registered on the mic. "I can't sleep. He's outside again. He hums the same song every time." She never named the song. But in another restored file, Maris heard its soft, distant, coming through the trees like a lullaby warped by distance. She cross-checked every clip dot, and then she saw it. Every time that tune played, Alina's breathing changed. Panic. Later that night, Maris sat alone in her car, the weight of it all settling in her chest. Alina had been alone, outnumbered, emotionally disarmed. She wasn't lost in the woods, she was hunted. She thought of Alina's knife, her trembling hands, the way she still tried to document what was happening even as she unraveled. She wasn't filming for content anymore. She was leaving evidence, proof, for someone who might one day find her. Maybe her mother, maybe the world, maybe... Justice. The next morning, Maris filed a request to reopen to cold cases linked to Cold Dermot's Park history. Both young women, both solo hikers, both ruled accidental drownings. But this time, they had more than a body, they had a voice. One last file was queued in the forensic system, corrupted, slow to decode, but the thumbnail made Maris's breath catch. Alina crouched low in the woods, eyes red, dirt smeared across her face. She was holding something small in her palm, not the camera, not a knife, a note. And on it just 2 words were visible: "Tell Lucas." Detective Maris pressed the pause button. The corrupted thumbnail from the last file had become clear. Alina, eyes hollow, holding a note. "Tell Lucas," it read. A name, no context. Just that. The lab grew still. Lucas, who, the next morning, Alina's mother, Genevieve Monroe, arrived at the station clutching a weathered shoebox wrapped in twine. Her hands trembled. "I didn't know if this meant anything, but she wrote these months before she left." Inside the box were dozens of unsent letters, each folded neatly and dated. Some were addressed to no one. Others said simply, "To them." The handwriting was undeniably Alina's, loopy, lyrical, urgent. One envelope, its seal never licked, caught Maris's eye. "Lucas, I'm sorry for everything, but I can't live like this anymore." She opened it. "You said we could be careful, but it never felt careful, only hidden. I knew what I was doing, falling for a married man. But I believed you when you said she didn't love you anymore. I believed you when you said this was more than just a phase. But I saw the way you looked at me at the ranger station. Like I was someone you had to survive, not someone you cherished. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. You always said the forest had eyes. I just never thought one of them would be you." Detective Maris leaned back. Her pen stopped mid-sentence. Lucas. She dug through the letters. His name showed up in at least 7 of them. Lucas's cabin. Lucas's boots. Lucas's favorite clearing. He wasn't just a ranger. He was her secret art, and now he was missing. According to park logs, Lucas Byers had taken unpaid leave 2 days after Alina disappeared. He never returned. His personnel file listed a forwarding address in Colorado, but neighbors there said he vanished midwinter. No bank activity. No digital footprint. No trace. Which meant one of 2 things. He was running from guilt, or someone had silenced him. In one torn letter dated just weeks before Alina's trip, her writing grew erratic, almost frantic. "You said she found out. That she drove out to the trailhead and screamed at you for hours. I don't want to be the reason your life crumbles, Lucas. But you're making me feel like a mistake. Like I was never real to you." Maris could feel the desperation in the ink. Alina was unraveling not because of the wilderness, but because of him. The camera footage, the haunting audio, the note in her hand, "Tell Lucas," and now, these letters. Alina had never been fully alone on that trip. She'd been followed, perhaps even met with Lucas willingly at first, maybe hoping to rekindle, maybe to get closure. Instead, she vanished. Maris requested all employment files from the local parks office. Lucas Byers had worked there for 6 years, commended twice, married. No disciplinary history, but one thing stood out. In his final month, he switched shifts frequently, swapped posts, volunteered for solo perimeter sweeps. In the week, Alina vanished. He was stationed within 4 miles of her last known location. No one questioned it until now. Genevieve pulled out one last letter, barely legible. It was stained. The ink bled from a tear. If I don't come back, know that I loved him, even if it destroyed me. But I'll never forgive myself for what I let happen. He made promises. I made excuses. Maris looked up. You said she never mailed these. Genevieve nodded. She didn't want me to know. I found them under her bed after she vanished. But you kept them. She nodded again. Because, deep down, I was afraid they meant something real. They did. The search for Lucas Byers was now a manhunt. But before they could trace his last known location, another call came in from a fire crew working near the Rio Grande. They had found something in the ashes. Smoke still curled from the embers when they arrived at the cabin remains. The crew had barely cleared the perimeter when Detective Maris found what looked like burnt fragments of a journal. Buried beneath a collapsed stone fireplace, they sent it for analysis. But the story was already beginning to take shape, and it started long before the flames. 6 days before she vanished, Alina's camera, mounted to her backpack, caught only fragments, blurred moments of the forest, her ragged breathing, muttered thoughts to herself. But a recovered audio file, labeled simply August 14th Ridge, contained everything. Windrushes, footsteps on gravel. Then, Lucas, you told them I hurt you, didn't you? That's what all this is. Your little truth project. Alina, shaking. No, I didn't. I haven't said anything to anyone. Lucas, then why are you filming everything, huh? Who's that for? The confrontation took place at a narrow ridge above the Rio Grande, the vanishing point, a local nickname for the steep overlook where the river cut sharply through the gorge. Alina had set up a tripod to film a monologue, but she never got to record it. He arrived unannounced earlier that week. She'd scribbled in her field journal. He's changing. His voice gets tight, like he's always waiting for me to slip. It used to feel like adventure. Now it feels like surveillance. What started as romantic secrecy had become something else, a trap she couldn't name. In the audio, Lucas's voice cracked not with sadness, but anger stitched with fear. Lucas, you think people will believe you? You think they'll take your side over mine? I've given you everything, my job, my marriage. Don't you dare throw this away for a sympathy clip. Alina, voice breaking, this wasn't part of the deal. Lucas, you said I could be free. Lucas, no one leaves until I say so. Silence followed, then the sound of something tumbling, rocks sliding. Alina gasped. It wasn't clear if he lunged or if she stepped back, but the final seconds of the audio were chaos. Wind, her muffled cry, a sickening crunch, then the device going still. What followed was even more haunting, the soft rustle of Lucas breathing, pacing. Then, one whispered line. Lucas, she'll stay quiet now. Forensic analysts concluded the recorder had been partially buried under brush, possibly kicked aside, possibly discarded intentionally. But its recovery filled the final gaps. Alina had not simply wandered, she had been pushed to the edge emotionally and nearly physically. Back in the present, Detective Maris stared down at a photograph of the ridge. Rangers called it the vanishing point because mist often pooled around the cliff, swallowing anyone who stood there in fog. For Alina, it was more than symbolic. It was where she lost control. Her writings from that week painted a woman in collapse. He says, love means loyalty. I think he means silence. I keep dreaming that I run and never stop. But I always wake up here, in these same trees. I don't think the forest is the one trapping me anymore. He watches me while I sleep, not sweetly, like he's trying to decide something. Lucas had weaponized what they once called their secret. In the journal scraps found in the ashes, a line was half preserved. If he burns it all, will I still exist? That question lingered in Maris's mind as she stared at the map of the gorge trail system. If Alina had survived the cliffside encounter, even for a few hours, where would she go? No phone, no clear trail. Just one clue. The wildlife camera from a nearby research project scheduled for maintenance the same night. It might have caught movement, a shadow, a direction, something. Maris radioed her team. Check the station logs. I want every trail cam pulled, especially the ones facing south. Maybe Alina had reached the water. Maybe she tried to run. But whatever happened after the vanishing point, she didn't vanish alone. It was the scent that struck them first. Not the sharp, familiar tang of decay, but something deeper, earthy, pungent, and wrong. Like rotting roots and iron-laced water, the search team had followed a line of torn foliage along the southern trail where the Rio Grande narrowed into an eddy-shrouded bend. Thick vines wrapped around twisted mesquite trees. The area was remote, untouched even by seasoned hikers. Locals called it Bloodroot Hollow, after the toxic wildflower that grew in clusters like spilled ink. Ranger Elena Reja's walking point froze when her boot sank an inch into what she thought was soft moss. But when she stepped back, the earth caved slightly and the tip of a torn zipper glinted under the mud. It was a backpack, partially buried, the fabric frayed, pink with dark stains. Alina radioed for backup. Within minutes, the team had unearthed the surrounding area and what they found made seasoned rangers grow silent. 5 shallow depressions in the soil, 4 filled with animal bones, the opossum, and 1 with bird skulls arranged in a circle. The 5th, recently disturbed. That's where the bag had been placed deliberately, like a marker. Inside the backpack was a water-damaged field journal, sealed in a cracked plastic pouch. Several pages were warped, but still legible. Detective Maris called to the site by sundown, sat cross-legged beside a lantern, and began to read. The entries started weeks before Alina's final days. Her handwriting began confident, smooth, slanted letters, rich with observation. Bloodroot Hollow. Locals avoid it. One man said, "It makes dogs howl all night." I thought it was just folklore, but something about this place, it's heavy, like it's watching. Another page, dated 2 days later. Lucas disappears for hours now, comes back dirt-covered, said he's mapping water runoff. But I saw claw marks on his arm today. He said it was a raccoon. It didn't look like a raccoon. Then came the drawings. Crude charcoal sketches, a deer half submerged in mud. Eyes gouged, a man's silhouette standing behind trees, eyes hollow and shaded red. A series of graves, some open, some with crosses above them. One sketch, labeled Burial 5, showed a bag just like hers, under a twisted tree. Maris kept flipping. The journal pages grew erratic. Words trailed off. Sentences became fragmented. Then one line scrawled multiple times across a full page. He says, "This land belongs to something older." He says it's listening. The final entry, clearly rushed and written at an angle, was on a loose page crammed into the back pocket of the journal. The ink was smudged. Dirt and what looked like dried blood crusted the corners. He's hunting now, not animals. Him carve a symbol in the tree near camp. When I confronted him, he said it keeps them away. Then he laughed and said I should start praying. He's not the man I met. He's not even pretending anymore. Maris felt a cold wind rise through the hollow. As she closed the journal, the site's layout was strange. Bones weren't randomly scattered. They were placed, arranged circles, triangles, one set in the shape of what resembled an eye with jagged lashes. Botanists brought in to catalogue the area noted something even more unsettling. Bloodroot plants, known for their bright red sap, only grew wild in a few places across the region, and never this thick. And yet here, they bloomed in unnatural clusters, around the burial pits, along the trees, and especially near the largest grave, the one that held the backpack. One scientist muttered that it looked cultivated, not accidental. A photographer from the forensics unit took a long exposure shot at dusk. When they reviewed it later, they noticed a shadow behind one of the trees. No team member had been in that position. No animal tracks were found. The shape was tall, human-like, but off. Later that night, back at base camp, Maris pinned Alina's sketches to a corkboard. One of the symbols she had drawn, what looked like a sun with thorns, matched a carving found on the bark of a cedar tree near the site. The knife marks were fresh. They had believed Lucas Byers had simply gone off-grid to avoid suspicion. Now, it appeared he had stayed close, watching, maintaining something that same night. Another ranger team radioed in. They had found a decaying tent site half a mile east of the Bloodroot field. Inside were food wrappers, notebooks with scattered paranoid ramblings, and a shirt identical to one seen in an old park. Ranger photos of Lucas Byers, but the campfire was still warm, and someone had scratched into a log by the fire pit. She brought them here. Maris circled the words and underlined them. Whatever happened in Bloodroot Hollow wasn't just a disappearance, it was a ritual, a possession of place. She glanced again at Alina's last message. He's hunting now. Then back at the photo of the carved symbol glowing in the bark. One investigator leaned in and whispered, "What if he's not hunting people anymore? What if he's hunting something else?" He hadn't been a ranger in years. When Interpol agents located Lucas Byers in a sun-bleached village in rural Mexico, he was going by the name Miguel Leon, working as a mechanic and sleeping in a shed behind a fruit vendor's home. He had grown a beard, shaved his head, and adopted a slow drawl almost enough to fool anyone. Except the scar, a jagged white gash above his right collarbone, the same one visible in a training photo taken 2 years before Alina Monroe disappeared. When Mexican authorities picked him up, he didn't resist. Just muttered, "Took you long enough." Detective Celia Maris watched through the one-way mirror at the El Paso field station, where Lucas sat in a grey t-shirt, shackled, arms resting on the cold metal table. His eyes weren't wild, they were steady. To steady Dot, she entered the room without a word, dropped Alina's journal on the table, and sat. Lucas didn't flinch. He looked at the journal, then at her. "Still carrying her ghost around, huh?" he said. "You ran," Maris replied calmly. "People don't run from nothing." Lucas gave a bitter laugh. "Or they run to stay alive." She opened a folder and pulled out a photo. The shallow grave, the backpack, the bloodroot blossoms. "We found your camp," she said. "I haven't been in that forest since." He paused. "Since when?" He exhaled. "Since she left." Raised an eyebrow. Left. Lucas leaned back, shrugging slightly. Alina was dramatic. She liked disappearing. That was her thing. "She was afraid of you," Maris said, flipping open the journal to an entry dated 5 days before her disappearance. She wrote, "He watches me while I sleep," not sweetly, like he's trying to decide something. Lucas stared at the page. Unmoved. "She wrote a lot of things," he said. "Some of them true, some of them fantasies." "You were in a relationship with her." His jaw clenched. "Yes, you were married." He nodded. Why didn't you report her missing?" Lucas leaned forward, his tone sharpening. "Because she didn't want to be found. She told me that she wanted to vanish. Said the forest was the only place she could finally breathe." Maris studied him. "You said in a journal she brought them here. Who are they, Lucas?" He looked up slowly. "She shouldn't have run," he said. "That forest swallows the weak." The words hit the air like frost. A long silence stretched between them. Maris flipped another page in the journal. A drawing, the symbol carved into the cedar tree, the sun with thorn-like rays. "She drew this. We found the same symbol at your campfire. You carved it." Lucas looked down. "It's protection." "From what?" He shrugged, but his voice dipped an octave. "Things out there, spirits, shadows, stuff you wouldn't understand. Try me." Lucas leaned closer, his eyes suddenly glinting. "You ever spend a night out there alone? No lights, no trail, just silence. After the third night, it doesn't stay silent. The trees breathe, the wind sings. You start to hear footsteps that don't match yours." His hands trembled slightly. Not fear memory, she thought she could. Film everything, control it, but she didn't understand. Some places don't want to be seen. Maris kept her face unreadable. "Did you hurt her?" Lucas smiled. "No." "Did you kill her?" "No, but you fought." He nodded. She was always pushing, always filming, wanted to turn every moment into a story. Some stories bite. Back. Maris stood and slid a photo across the table. Alina's final sketch of the ridge, the one labeled Burial 5. "We found this. Beneath it, your carving." Her bag, her voice, recorded on tape, saying, "He's hunting now." Lucas's Hands stayed folded. I didn't bury her. Then who did? Another long silence. Then, you think I'm the monster, he whispered. You don't even know what she did. What did she do? She stayed too long. Outside the room, federal agents reviewed everything. Journal entries, trail cam footage, voice recordings. It wasn't enough for a murder charge, not yet. But it was enough for obstruction, enough for psychological manipulation, and it was enough to finally reopen the cold case file from Zion National Park, the one involving a female solo hiker who vanished while Lucas was on duty in 2016. Back in the room, Maris's voice softened. She loved you, you know. She wrote it down. Lucas's lips curled slightly, but it wasn't joy. It was regret. She wanted to believe in things, he said. She thought the wild was hers to tame. He stared at the table. But the wild doesn't care who you are, and neither do the things inside it. Maris turned to leave. As she reached the door, Lucas spoke again, almost to himself. You said I ran. I didn't run. She paused. Stayed long enough to know she never left that forest. Then he looked up, voice almost a whisper. She became part of it. The courtroom was hushed. Dust swirled through sunbeams that fell across the hardwood floors like a silent benediction. Every eye was on the screen. Even Lucas, cuffed and flanked by guards, didn't blink. Detective Maris stood by the DA, arms crossed tight, breath held. The technician leaned in. Begin playback. The judge ordered. The footage flickered. It was grainy at first, just underbrush and shifting dusk, but then a figure emerged. Alina Monroe, mud-streaked, panting, her eyes wild with fear. She crouched behind a large fallen cedar, the camera about 10 feet away. She looked straight into the lens, whispering, He followed me. He said he'd protect me, but I saw the knife. He's close now. I think this is it. Gasps echoed across the room. Lucas's face remained unreadable, but his shoulders tightened. Alina's whisper cracked again. Mom, if you ever see this, I love you. I'm so sorry I trusted him. I didn't know. A branch snapped off screen. She turned sharply. Her mouth opened, but no scream came. Then a shadow moved swiftly across the frame. A blur, a heavy footfall. The leaves shook. The screen jolted, static, the footage ended. The courtroom was dead silent, until a soft sob rose from the front. Rowelina's mother crumpled in her seat, hand over her mouth. The judge didn't gavel. He didn't need to. The truth had gavelled itself. 30 minutes later, the jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, no one dared breathe. On the charge of the murder of Alina Monroe. Guilty. On the charge of the murder of Kendra Ellison. Guilty. On the charge of the murder of Hannah Royce. Guilty. Whispers erupted. Then, tears. Lucas blinked slowly. His expression didn't change, but his foot tapped. Maris watched him closely. That same rhythm. The same tap she'd seen in the interrogation room when the past began to crumble. The judge's voice thundered through the final moment. Mr. Byers, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The gavel struck. Justice at last. Outside the courthouse, sunset. The crowd gathered, cameras flashing. Microphones thrust toward anyone with a badge or a broken heart. Detective Maris stepped out with the DA, flanked by officers. She left us a message, Maris told reporters. Her truth outlived her. Reporters jostled. One shouted, Do you think he killed the other girls the same way? Maris didn't pause. Yes, but this time, we listened better. Holding cell. 1 hour later, Lucas sat alone, elbows on the metal table. The mask he'd worn, for years confident, seductive, innocent, had peeled off. He looked smaller now, not guilty. Just finished. In his hand was a copy of a photo Alina smiling at a festival. Flower crown on her head. A guard passed him. You had people fooled, he muttered. Lucas didn't answer. Just stared at the photo like it was both a memory and a warning. Back at the forest, weeks later, Ranger Unit, Bravo 9, returned to the trail one last time. They wanted closure for the families. For the evidence logs, for Maris. At the site near the fallen cedar where the video had been filmed, they discovered something buried beneath a heap of leaves and bramble. A box. Inside, a journal wrapped in flannel, soaked and torn, but readable. In parts, Alina's final entries. Maris read the recovered pages later that night under a desk lamp. I thought love meant following someone into the dark, but real love would have turned back when I screamed. If I don't make it, tell them. He smiles when he lies. He calls it nature, but he's the predator. I hope the truth finds its way out even if I don't. Maris closed the journal, tears lining her vision. The truth had found its way out. Alina had made sure of it. Mist drifted above the slow-moving water like a veil. A soft wind passed through the canyon, stirring the long grass by the edge of the Rio Grande. It was quiet. Not eerily so, just respectfully still. Alina Monroe stepped carefully down the rocky bank, her black hiking shoes crunching against the sand and shale. In her hand was a smooth, flat stone. It was engraved with a simple message: Alina Monroe 1994. 2020, still wild, still loved. She knelt by the water. It had been 6 years since the footage had emerged. 6 years since the trial. 6 years since justice and grief had settled in strange, equal measure. Lucas Byers would never breathe free air again. But that hadn't stopped the pain from echoing. Not a day passed when Alina didn't dream of her daughter's voice, sometimes angry, sometimes laughing, sometimes just whispering through trees that didn't exist. Now, she held the stone over the water, closed her eyes, and whispered, "You were brave, sweetheart, braver than anyone ever gave you credit for." She let it go. The stone sank slowly, slipping into the current, swallowed by the Rio Grande, like the old camera had been. The one that eventually washed up here, half buried in driftwood and mud. Carrying the final clues, Alina stood again, brushing tears from her face. A single bird cried above. Slicing through the silence, suddenly faint audio crackled through a small speaker near the stone cross she had set earlier. Her hand went to the old digital recorder she'd brought. The file was cued, trembling with life. She pressed play, and then, like an echo from time itself, Lena's voice, "Hey, it's me, Liana. Some people think you go into the wild to escape, but I think it's where you go to remember." The voice was younger, full of wonder and edge. It was one of her earliest vlog entries, before the chaos, before Lucas, before it all turned dark. The wild doesn't just show you the world, it shows you who people really are. Alina closed her eyes. That line always broke her. She could picture Alina back then, camera in hand, wide eyes, red bandana tied around her wrist, curious, untamed, beautiful. The water lapped against the shore. The sun broke fully over the horizon now, painting gold across the surface of the river. A new day, a new year, but not a new memory. Some things never moved on. Even as the world kept spinning, she stepped back and looked once more at the simple memorial. A small cross of riverwood and the photographs tucked under stones. Alina smiling. Beside a tent, Alina holding up a snake with pride. Alina, arms out, wind in her hair, as if flying. A woman stepped forward behind her. It was Detective Maris, older now, but no less sharp. "I couldn't stay away today," Maris said gently. Alina smiled, touched. She'd have liked that. They stood in silence together. Two women tethered forever by one girl's vanishing and one truth to long buried. She changed a lot of lives, Maris added. Alina nodded. She saved them, too. In the end, a long pause. Then Maris said, "We got a letter last month. From another girl who traveled with him. Said she remembered something from years before. Something about a cliff. She didn't come forward until now." Alina looked over. "Why now?" Maris watched the water. Because Alina gave her the courage. The river shimmered as if in reply. Later, as the wind picked up and the sun rose higher, Alina turned to leave. She paused at the top of the ridge and looked back one last time. The cross stood firm. The speaker had gone quiet, but in her heart she heard her daughter's voice again. If you're watching this, I hope you go somewhere wild and find out who you really are." She smiled through the tears, then turned and walked away. The world moved on. That's what they all said. News cycles faded. Hashtags disappeared. The documentaries dried up. And for everyone else, the name Alina Munro became just another cautionary tale, tragic, haunting, and eventually replaced by the next one. But for those who had loved her, known her, fought for her truth, the world hadn't moved on. It had simply shifted. Luna stood outside the university's lecture hall, sunlight in her curls and a folder pressed to her chest. She had grown taller now, surer in her movements. But the shadow of the past still lingered just behind her eyes. Inside, a packed audience waited. She took a breath. Today's talk was titled, "Survival, Silence, and the Stories We Bury." When Luna stepped to the podium, her voice didn't tremble. "Not anymore. I was 11 when my sister disappeared," she began, the hall silent, "and 15 when a camera floated out of a river and told the truth." Luna's words carried weight, not just pain, but transformation. She didn't die because she was careless, she continued. She died because someone saw her light and wanted to trap it. A pause. She died fighting to tell the story. On the screen behind her, an image appeared. Alina, on a trail, mid-laugh, sunlight in her hair. "But she still speaks," Luna said, voice steady now, through what she left behind. That evening, Luna returned home to a small apartment filled with plants, books, and a single framed quote by the door. "The wild doesn't just show you the world, it shows you who people really are." She placed her lecture notes on the table, lit a candle by the window, and sat down to journal. It had become her ritual, a way to stay tethered. She wrote, "6 years ago, we thought closure meant answers. Now I know it means the ability to keep going. To smile without guilt, to laugh without forgetting, to live like she would have wanted." The candle flickered. Somewhere, wind moved through the leaves outside. A bird called out. And still, in the quiet corners of life, Alina's presence lingered. Elsewhere, Detective Maris was wrapping up her final day on the job. Her desk, long cluttered with case files, was nearly clear. But one photo remained. Alina standing barefoot near a waterfall, looking up at the sky like it was telling her secrets. She picked up the frame, smiled, and whispered, "You did good, kid." Then she locked the office door behind her. Across town, in a small bookstore, a man purchased a memoir titled Wilderness Witness, the Alina Munro story. He tucked it into his backpack, unaware that the girl on the cover had once stared into a lens and tried to warn the world. And far from all of them, the Rio Grande moved on, slow, deep, and forever, holding secrets no one else would ever find. Beneath its surface, time blurred, but above it, memory breathed. And somewhere in the shifting winds of the canyon, if you listened closely enough, you could still hear her voice. Stay wild, stay honest. Don't let anyone dim your light.